Hey guys, Lockin here. Today doing a different style of video than I usually do, which is talking about the early meta favorites, giving them reviews, kind of giving you a few deck lists to maybe try out if you're a little lost on what to do, and generally talking about my favorites at this point in the metagame. We've seen the average value of bronzes drop a lot, with nerfs to Marauder, Skirmisher, Bone Talisman taking hits. These three cards in particular jump out to me as reasons that the meta right now is what it is. We're actually seeing a meta that's less about, instant tempo and more about the tempo you can generate over 4 or 5 cards. That's why a lot of decks like Reveal or Elf Swarm are coming up. These are decks that in the first 2 or 3 cards aren't going to overwhelm you, but will do it in about 4 or 5. And that's where we're going to start off for our first early favorite of mine, and this is my favorite so far, and that's Mulligan Scoia'tael. The deck has a strong round 1 swarm. It's nearly impossible for the deck to have bad round 1 draws. It can win a long round against just about everything except, Ballista Machines and Axemen, and you always have the upside of losing 1 up strategically with the War Dancer to fall back on. And this is a really powerful deck. It does a lot of things great, but it also has some shortcomings. It does lack a high power finisher, and a lot of times is forced to bank on card advantage to win games, which is, an acceptable win condition, but is not always reliable. Another problem the deck can have is it lacks ways to kill your opponent's units and engines outside of maybe 2 or 3 cards, assuming you draw all of them instantly anyways. And the deck can be relatively slow to ramp up, but the deck is weak to high tempo openings from things like Reveal. Ideally, you want to be playing your half-elf hunters and your elven scouts early to get as many elf tags down as you can in about 3 turns. That way you can pull Ailerin by about turn 3, and then you can immediately follow up with Officer into Mulligan the Vanguard. And not only is the Officer Vanguard itself an 11-point play, but usually by turn 3 or 4 you have at least 5 or 6 elf tags, so it's an additional 5 or 6. I mean, if your hand is particularly slow, or if you're going second and can afford to do so, a lot of times you can also go Francesca into Mulligan the Vanguard away, and you can actually grab your Saskia or your Yorveth or your Isengrim. And something I see people do wrong a lot is it's usually better to miss a couple points on Yorveth than it is to actually miss the points on the Vanguard Mulligan. A lot of times Yorveth will be buffing about 7 units in your hand, and 2 or 3 of those might be Vanguards, which you do want in your opening hand, so you can Mulligan them away. And the buffs on them don't really do a whole lot, so a lot of times it's better to get a couple extra points and Francesca 2 or 3 cards into the round, and then Yorveth, rather than Francesca right away and then miss the Mulligan points just to get Yorveth sooner. Moving on to our second deck is Reveal. I mentioned it earlier. The deck is scary. It's arguably the best deck in the game on red coin right now. If even 1 Mangonel sticks, it's pretty much guaranteed to take the round. If 2 Mangonels manage to stick, it can quite literally beat any deck in a long round right now. It thins pretty aggressively with Golems and Foot Soldiers, and it has powerful removal options through Yennefer Enchantress, Bork, Scorch, and more. So what exactly is keeping Reveal in check right now? Well, one of those things is the coin flip. On blue coin, Reveal has to lead rather aggressively with Mangonels, and if the opponent has ways to kill said Mangonels, the opponent is managing to stick units with the Mangonels dying, and eventually what will happen is the opponent will have 8 or 9 points on the board, and the Reveal player will have 2 dead Mangonels, and now he's forced to decide if he wants to commit this final Mangonel. Or if he just goes Morven and plays a bunch of stuff, his opponent waits for the Reveal player to go through a lot of his power plays and then passes in a timely manner. These sorts of passes destroy Reveal. Reveal can't afford them. However, 50% of games you will get red coin and your opponent won't be able to do that, and you will steamroll them. Another upside for Reveal is that the overall power decrease of finishers has meant cards like Scorch and Bork and Yennefer, as mentioned before, are more powerful finishers because they let you kill your opponents more easily. In the past, your opponent was diverting a lot of points among Hattori, Agitators, Poly, and scorching a 12 or 15 point skirmisher was nice, but your opponent had played 9 other points that round across multiple bodies that didn't get scorched. Another upside that the deck has is Vinadol onto Cantarella is quite literally one of the most disgusting plays in Gwent. Reveal as a whole is sort of kept in check by this lack of a finisher and coin flip, but Vinadol Elite in an isolation is one of the most disgusting plays in Gwent. One of the downsides now, looking at this, is that while Reveal has a lot of power plays, these power plays come at very real cost. For example, a lot of power plays in round 3 with Fire Scorpions means that your opponent has 10-point bronzes in their hand. And on average, a lot of round 3 plays from Reveal are very weak because the Reveal synergy is gone. The Mangonels have been killed or they've been played. To get these big power plays with Fire Scorpions, you then have to later play them as 10-point bronzes later in the round. One of the things you can do as Reveal is you can use Vrygef to get one Mangonel down, and then if your opponent doesn't kill it, play Morven and just start thinning cards. Rather than overcommitting a bunch of Mangonels to win a round that you're going to win anyway, try to save the Mangonels. Try to find value later on as ways to secure longer rounds where your Mangonels may have already been used to secure earlier rounds. Lastly, the final deck we're looking at is Nova Dagon. And this is a list that has been talked about before. It's probably relatively familiar to some people. It is a list that Ocean Mud popularized for Eridan. It does have some slight tweaks. It is tailored towards Dagon, and the deck more naturally fits towards Dagon's strategy than Eridan's. And the overall decrease of tempo in the game as an opener means that the Dagon plus Fog plus the Foglet thinning, or just Woodlands in general, is back to being a very strong play. The deck is, quite honestly, very powerful on red coin. Being able to comfortably set up your passive point generators through Fog, Dagon, Woodlands, Moonlight, through Sirens, the passive point generation this deck has over time will slowly steamroll you on red coin, and there's not a lot you can do about it. The deck also has a lot of versatile tools and options depending on what it wants. It can find carryover with things like Monster's Nest, it has removal through Mandrake, it has locks through Morvud, it has just raw points through Toad Prince. Right now, Dagon is in a spot where he sort of just does everything okay, and because of that I think he's a very safe pick. His finisher's not even that weak because he can play Nova. Overall, Dagon is a very safe pick right now. One of the downsides, though, is Dagon is very weak to Weather Clear right now, and also weak to your opponent playing Weather. Queuing into Axeman, for example, is a double shot to Dagon, because not only are they removing your Moonlight, but they're also applying their own Weather effect to you. Another weakness of the deck is it's very last say dependent. The deck requires Nova to stick to have a chance of winning round 3, and when Nova gets removed a lot of the times, it'll be game over for Dagon. Dagon's only real other finisher is Toad Prince into Ghoul, which admittedly is a good finisher, but is oftentimes used in early rounds to take the round, and a lot of times Nova is left as your final win condition. Another thing is that the deck has a lot of dead draws. The mulligan slots can get a little dicey. They're by no means atrocious and super common, but they are common enough that the deck does have to worry about them some. It's usually best to win this round one down, and then dry pass to guarantee that Nova has the last say. If your opponent doesn't want you having last say, they have to then commit a spy, which is a free 13 points for you, and at that point you're willing to trade the last say because you got the 13. You should really only pass one up if they have carryover anyways, or if they're not going to be able to make it without going at least 2 down, and which is, more possible than you would think, just because of the fact that Dagon is routinely generating 4 to 8, sometimes even 10 passive points a turn, and it may get away from your opponent, and you might be able to say, you can't get me here, and pass. I don't really want to go into why they're strong. I want to keep this video relatively short. We're really seeing a meta right now where it's less about the tempo you can play immediately and the tempo you can play over 3 or 4 cards, and that kind of is a symptom of coin flip. These decks that very quickly abuse red coin over about 3 or 4 cards before the opponent ever has time to do anything, and we're seeing these decks abuse these very easily, which is what we're seeing Reveal do, it's what we're seeing Mulligan do, it's what we're seeing Dagon do. These cards that snowball very quickly are taking over this meta right now because the overall just straight value of bronzes initially early in the round has gone down overall. So I would look to see more of these decks being strong moving forward, and let me know if there's a deck that you want to see me talk about or a certain faction you want to see featured on the next one.